I was sitting in the back of a Rolls-Royce, wearing a dress that cost more than my parents made in a month, on my way to a private dinner at a penthouse overlooking the city skyline. My bank account had 6 figures in it. I had designer bags in my closet that most women only see in magazines. I had been flown to Paris twice that year on private jets. I had jewelry worth more than most people's cars. And I remember looking out the window at the city lights twinkling below me and feeling absolutely nothing. No happiness, no satisfaction, no peace, no gratitude. Just this gnawing emptiness in my chest that no amount of money or luxury or male attention could ever seem to fill. And in that moment, even though I had everything the world told me I should want, everything society said would make me happy and fulfilled, I wanted to die. I genuinely fantasized about opening that car door while we were moving and just letting go, just ending all of it. That is what the sugar lifestyle did to me. It gave me everything and left me with nothing. But what I did not know then, what I could not have possibly understood sitting in that dark moment in the back of that expensive car, was that God was about to completely wreck the life I had built for myself and save me from destroying myself entirely. Let me take you back to the very beginning so you can understand how a girl from a normal Christian home in the suburbs ended up selling herself to wealthy older men for money and expensive gifts and trips around the world. I grew up in a nice suburb in what looked like a picture-perfect American family from the outside. We went to church every single Sunday without fail. My dad was a deacon in our congregation, and everyone respected him. My mom led women's Bible studies on Wednesday nights and was known for her hospitality. We said grace before every meal. We had scripture verses framed on our walls. I knew all the right answers in Sunday school and could recite memory verses better than any other kid in my class. I could quote scripture and sing all the hymns and raise my hands during worship. I looked like the perfect little Christian girl. But if I am being completely honest with you right now, I never had a real relationship with Jesus Christ. Not once in my entire childhood. I had religion. I had routine. I had performance. I had all the external markers of faith. But I did not actually have Jesus. And there is a massive and important difference between knowing about God and actually knowing Him personally. My parents loved me in their own way, but our home was not nearly as perfect as it appeared to everyone at church and in our neighborhood. My father was emotionally distant and unavailable throughout my entire childhood. He worked constantly, 60 or 70 hours a week at his corporate job. And when he was actually home, he was either exhausted or mentally distracted thinking about work. I cannot remember a single time that my father looked me in the eyes and told me I was beautiful. I cannot remember him ever telling me I was smart or talented, or that he was proud of me for anything I accomplished. He provided financially. He showed up physically. But emotionally, he was completely absent from my life. My mother was present in the house, but checked out emotionally in her own way. She was more concerned with how things looked to the outside world, how our family appeared at church, what the neighbors might think, and she was with how things actually were behind closed doors. Appearances mattered more than authenticity in our home. Performance mattered more than genuine connection. We were trained to smile and say everything was fine, even when it was not. So I grew up with this deep, desperate hunger for attention and affirmation from men that I did not even know how to name or articulate. I just knew instinctively that something important was missing inside of me. I knew that I did not feel loved the way I needed to be loved. I knew that there was a void in my heart where my father's approval should have been. And that wound, father wound, that so many women carry, would eventually lead me down a path of destruction that almost killed me. When I went away to college at 18 years old, I was finally free from my parents' watchful eyes and free from the religious performance I had been maintaining my entire life. And I went absolutely wild. I started partying every weekend and then most weekdays too. I started drinking heavily, blacking out regularly. I started sleeping around with any guy who showed me attention, because that attention felt like the validation I had been starving for my whole life. I was searching desperately for something to fill that void inside of me, and I thought maybe male attention would finally do it. Maybe if enough men wanted me, I would finally feel valuable and worthy. Maybe if I was desirable enough, I would finally feel loved and accepted. But of course it did not work. It never works that way. Every hookup left me feeling emptier and more hollow than before. Every guy who used my body for his pleasure and then moved on to the next girl just confirmed what I secretly believed about myself deep down, that I was worthless except for my body, that I was only good for one thing, that no one would ever actually love me for who I was. And the shame spiral just kept pulling me deeper and deeper into darkness and self-destruction. I was 20 years old and drowning in that darkness when a friend introduced me to the sugar lifestyle. Her name was Brianna, and she was a few years older than me, maybe 23 or 24. She seemed to have it all completely figured out. She had beautiful, expensive clothes and shoes. She lived in a luxury apartment near campus that her parents definitely were not paying for. She traveled constantly to exotic destinations, and she did not have a regular job or any visible source of income. When I finally got up the courage to ask her how she afforded her lifestyle, she laughed, like I had asked the most obvious question in the world, and said she had arrangements with wealthy older men. She called them sugar daddies. She made the whole thing sound so sophisticated and glamorous and empowering. She told me that these men just wanted companionship and someone beautiful to spoil with their money. She said it was definitely not prostitution because there was a real connection and relationship involved. She said she was completely in control of the situation at all times. She said becoming a sugar baby was the smartest decision she had ever made in her life. I was skeptical and hesitant at first. I had grown up in church, after all. Some part of me, some small voice in the back of my mind, knew instinctively that this was wrong, that this was not what I was created for. But I was also absolutely drowning in student loan debt. I was exhausted from being broke all the time while watching other girls around me have nice things. And I was already sleeping with random guys for free who treated me like garbage anyway. At least this way I would get something tangible out of it. At least this way my body would be worth something. That is how I justified it in my broken mind. Brianna helped me set up a profile on one of the popular sugar dating websites. We spent an entire afternoon taking glamorous photos of me in different outfits with perfect lighting and makeup. We carefully crafted my bio together to make me sound sophisticated and cultured and fun and just the right amount of flirty. And within just a few days of my profile going live, my inbox was completely flooded with messages from wealthy men, doctors and surgeons, lawyers and partners at prestigious firms, executives and businessmen, tech entrepreneurs, married men looking to cheat on their wives, single men who did not want the complications of real relationships, men old enough to be my father, men old enough to be my grandfather, all of them willing to pay significant amounts of money just to spend time with a pretty young woman like me. My very first arrangement was with a man in his mid-50s who owned several car dealerships across the state. His name was Richard, and he was not physically attractive to me at all. He was overweight, with thinning gray hair and a wedding ring he never bothered to take off. But he was polite and well-mannered and extremely generous. He gave me $2,000 in cash just for having dinner with him at an expensive steakhouse. I remember sitting across from him at that restaurant, laughing at his jokes that were not funny, pretending to be fascinated by his boring stories about the car business, touching his arm flirtatiously, even though it made my skin crawl, and thinking to myself, this is so easy. This is the easiest money I have ever made in my entire life. I felt powerful for the first time ever. I felt smart and savvy. I felt like I had discovered a cheat code to life that other women were too naive or too proud to use. Within just a few months, I had multiple arrangements going simultaneously with different men. I had my regulars who gave me monthly allowances ranging anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 each, depending on what they expected from me. Some of them wanted just dinner and companionship and conversation, but most of them wanted more than that. Most of them wanted physical intimacy, and I gave them what they wanted because the money was too good to walk away from. I told myself constantly that it was my choice. I told myself I was empowered and liberated. I told myself I was using them just as much as they were using me. But deep down, underneath all those lies I repeated to myself, I knew the truth. I was selling pieces of my soul, one transaction at a time, and each piece I sold left me more empty than before. The lifestyle escalated quickly over the next year. The men I attracted got wealthier and more powerful. The gifts got more extravagant and ridiculous. I was flown on private jets to vacation homes in the Caribbean and Europe. I was given designer handbags that cost $10,000 or $15,000, like they were nothing. I received jewelry and watches and shopping sprees at luxury stores that would make most people's heads spin. I went from barely being able to afford ramen noodles and cheap vodka to having more money in my bank account than I knew what to do with. I moved out of my cramped student housing into a luxury high-rise apartment with a doorman and a view. I drove a white Mercedes that one of my sugar daddies bought for me outright as a gift. From the outside looking in, my life looked like an absolute dream. I looked like the luckiest girl in the world. But inside, where no one could see, I was slowly dying. The emptiness I had felt before I started this lifestyle did not go away with all the money and gifts. It got so much worse, exponentially worse. Because now I had everything that the world and society said should make a woman happy and fulfilled, and I was still completely miserable. I had money, but absolutely no peace. I had luxury, but no joy. I had constant attention from men, but no real love. No one actually knew me. No one actually cared about me as a person, and the shame of what I was doing was eating me alive from the inside out. I could not tell anyone what I was really doing for money. I had to lie constantly and elaborately to my family during phone calls, to my old friends from high school, to everyone in my life. I constructed an entire fake narrative about a marketing job I did not have. I was living a complete double life, and the psychological weight of maintaining it was absolutely crushing me. I started drinking heavily every day to numb the pain and the shame. Then I moved on to harder substances, because alcohol was not enough anymore. Cocaine became my best friend and constant companion, because it made me feel confident and alive and numb during the arrangements, and helped me forget what I was doing to myself and who I was becoming. I was spiraling out of control, and I knew it clearly, but I could not stop. The money had become an addiction just as powerful as the drugs. The validation of being wanted by wealthy, powerful men had become a drug. The lifestyle had me completely trapped in its grip. The men I was involved with did not see me as a human being with feelings and dreams and value. They saw me as a product, a service, an object to be used for their entertainment and pleasure, and then set aside until they wanted me again. I remember one of them, a hedge fund manager in his 60s, looking at me after we had been intimate in his hotel suite, and saying with a smirk, "You know you are not special, right? I have 3 other girls just like you, younger ones too." He said it so casually, so dismissively, like he was commenting on the weather outside, and something inside of me shattered into a million pieces in that moment. Because he was absolutely right. I was not special to any of these men. I was interchangeable. I was replaceable. I was disposable. I was nothing but a warm body and a pretty face that could be swapped out for a newer model at any time. By my 3rd year, deep in the lifestyle, I was a complete and total wreck in every way. I had made hundreds of thousands of dollars over those years and spent almost all of it, desperately trying to fill the void that only grew larger. Drugs, alcohol, compulsive shopping, expensive trips, cosmetic procedures, none of it worked. Nothing touched that emptiness. I was having severe panic attacks on a regular basis that would leave me unable to breathe. I was clinically depressed to the point of being unable to get out of bed for days at a time. I was actively suicidal, researching methods and writing notes. I would look in the mirror at my expensive apartment in my designer clothes and not recognize the hollow, dead-eyed person staring back at me. I had become someone I hated, someone I was deeply disgusted by and ashamed of, someone I wanted to destroy. The night I mentioned at the very beginning, sitting in that Rolls-Royce wanting desperately to die, that was my absolute breaking point. I went to that penthouse dinner and sat across from a man who was older than my own father, smiling and flirting and laughing and pretending everything was wonderful, while inside I was screaming in agony. And when I finally got home that night, to my luxury apartment, filled with expensive, beautiful things, I collapsed on my bathroom floor and sobbed uncontrollably for hours until I had nothing left. And in that moment of complete brokenness, I cried out to a God I was not even sure I believed in anymore. I said out loud through my tears, "God, if you are real, if you are actually there, and you can hear me, I cannot do this anymore. I am dying inside. Please help me. Please save me from myself. I do not know how to stop this. I do not know how to get out. Please." I did not hear an audible voice from heaven. I did not have a dramatic, supernatural vision. But something shifted deep inside of me that night on that bathroom floor. For the first time in years and years, I felt like maybe there was hope somewhere. Maybe there was a way out of this darkness. Maybe God had not completely given up on me, even though I had totally given up on myself and on Him. The next several weeks were an intense battle. I knew deep down that I needed to leave the lifestyle completely, but I was absolutely terrified. Terrified of losing the money I had become dependent on. Terrified of having to start completely over from nothing. Terrified of facing honestly who I had become and what I had done. But I also knew with certainty that if I did not get out soon, I was going to die, either by my own hand or from the drugs, or from the consuming darkness that was swallowing me whole. Staying in the lifestyle was no longer an option if I wanted to survive. I ended my arrangements one by one over the following weeks. Some of the men got angry and aggressive. Some tried desperately to manipulate me into staying with promises of more money. One of them threatened to expose me to my family. But I had made up my mind, and nothing was going to change it. I was done. I sold the Mercedes and used the money to pay off debts. I moved out of the luxury apartment and into a tiny studio I could actually afford on a normal income. I gave away or sold most of the designer clothes and bags because I could not even look at them without feeling physically sick. I was starting completely over with almost nothing except the broken, shattered pieces of who I used to be before all of this. That is when God sent a woman named Maria into my life at exactly the right moment. Maria was a coworker at the normal minimum wage job I had taken at a coffee shop. She was in her late 30s, quiet and kind, with a gentle spirit, and there was something different about her that I could not quite identify at first. She had this peace radiating from her that did not make any logical sense. She seemed genuinely happy and content, even though she clearly did not have much money or material possessions. And she would talk about Jesus like he was her actual close personal friend, not like he was some distant religious figure she had read about. One day after a particularly difficult shift where I had broken down crying in the back storage room, Maria quietly asked me if I wanted to get dinner after work and just talk. I do not know why I said yes. I had not genuinely opened up to another human being in years, but something about her calm presence made me feel safe enough to consider it. So I went, and at that dinner at a cheap little diner, I told her everything, all of it. The sugar lifestyle, the wealthy men, the hundreds of thousands of dollars, the drugs and alcohol, the suicidal thoughts and attempts, every shameful detail I had been hiding from the world. I expected her to be completely disgusted by me. I expected her to judge me harshly and get up and walk away like any normal person would. But Maria did not do any of that. She just listened to every single word, with tears streaming down her face. And when I was finally finished, she reached across the table and took both of my hands in hers and said something I will never forget as long as I live. She said, "The God I know is not surprised by anything you just told me. He saw every single moment of it. He was there through all of it, and he loves you exactly the same today as he loved you before any of it ever happened. His love for you is not based on your performance or your mistakes. His love is not something you can earn or lose through your choices. His love is unconditional and relentless, and absolutely nothing you have ever done or could ever do can separate you from it. The life you are living was slowly killing you because it was never what you were created for. You were created for so much more than that. And Jesus Christ is reaching out his hand to you right now, in this moment, asking if you will let him show you who you really are." I completely broke down sobbing in that diner booth. Years of accumulated shame and guilt and self-hatred came flooding out of me in waves. And for the first time in my entire life, I genuinely cried out to Jesus from the depths of my heart. Not the religious Jesus I had learned about in my parents' church growing up. The real Jesus. The one who sits with broken women at diner tables and tells them they are loved. The one who does not condemn, but freely offers mercy. The one who died for me while I was still in the very middle of my worst and most shameful choices. Maria started meeting with me regularly after that night. She walked me slowly through the Bible and showed me who God really was. Not the distant, disapproving God I had imagined my whole life, but a loving Father who had been relentlessly pursuing me, even when I was running as fast as I could in the opposite direction. She helped me understand that my father wound, that deep, desperate need for male affirmation I had been trying to fill with sugar daddies, could only truly be healed by receiving the perfect love of my Heavenly Father. She showed me that my value and worth was never in my body or my sexuality or how much money men were willing to pay for me. My value was in being a beloved daughter of the King, and that was a value that could never ever be taken away by anyone or anything. The healing process was incredibly long and genuinely painful. I had to detox from all the substances I had been abusing. I had to go through extensive counseling to process the trauma of what I had experienced and what I had willingly done. I had to learn completely from scratch how to have healthy relationships with men instead of transactional ones. I had to rewire my entire understanding of my own worth and identity. There were many setbacks along the way. There were days I desperately wanted to go back to the lifestyle because the struggle of rebuilding a normal life felt so much harder than what I had been doing before. But Jesus never once let me go. Every time I stumbled and fell, he gently picked me back up. Every time I doubted, he patiently reminded me of his promises and his love. It has been 6 years now since I walked away from the sugar lifestyle for good. I am completely free from drugs and alcohol. I work a normal job that pays a tiny fraction of what I used to make, and I have never been happier or more at peace in my entire life. I am in a healthy, loving relationship with a man who loves Jesus and loves me for exactly who I am, not for what I can give him or do for him. We are engaged and planning our wedding. I am reconciled with my family and have had real, honest conversations with my parents about my childhood wounds. Our relationships are healthier than they have ever been. But the most important change is what happened inside of me. That void I was desperately trying to fill my entire life, the one that no amount of money, or male attention, or substances could ever touch, it is finally full. Not because I found the right circumstances or relationship or career, but because I found Jesus.